I'm Izzi Smith. I started my SEO journey at Sixt Rent-A-Car, and then I sidestepped into doing team marketing, product marketing for Right, online marketing SaaS company. And last year I sidestepped into e-commerce, working for Kurzgesagt, which means in a nutshell in German, and we're one of the largest science communication YouTube channels, and there I help support the online shop, which keeps us independent and creating more free content for a lot of people to learn from. I'm so happy to be working in e-commerce. It is absolutely chef's kiss. I love it. We're all so lucky. So I'm really, really happy to be here to be learning from all of you as well. So to say it plays such a huge role in our lives and work, the internet's environmental impact is either all too invisible or all too overlooked. Whereas studies have actually found that the internet's carbon footprint is so significant it accounts for around 3.7% of all greenhouse global emissions. And to put that into perspective, that is roughly the same amount as the airline industry or produced by the country of Japan. So it is quite large. And a study done in 2019 found that these emissions were even set to double by 2025. And something happened after 2019 that increased internet usage even more. Of course, the pandemic, and we all moved to home office, and many of us stayed there, thankfully, when internet usage actually increased by 40% worldwide. And to put this into perspective even more, in 2013, the amounts were at 2% of global emissions produced by the internet, so we're on a really negative trend. A huge problem here is actually that the internet's output feels so intangible. It feels like, because of course we're not working on sending out paper mails that have very clear carbon impacts as well. So we're delivering digital content, so it doesn't feel that bad actually. So what causes this large share of global carbon emissions? Well, we can fit it into these three categories here. So end device energy consumption, data transfer across networks, and the high cost of running data centers. The good news is that hardware efficiency is really improving. Some recent studies found that data centers are getting much, much better at handling higher capacities of internet traffic at similar or improved, let's say, energy efficiencies. But software efficiency? Not so much. We see really negative trends like this where average compressed page sizes are growing drastically. Pages are on average 380% larger than 12 years ago. Contributing factors to this just revolve around how we work in SEO and e-commerce. You know, we work on providing more helpful assets. We grow our online shops. We add more products. They get larger and larger. We don't do this on purpose, of course. It's in our nature to maximize the output and visibility of our online shops so we can get more traffic, of course. And let's focus on the good news today. So some more good news for us all is that in this room, we have so many e-commerce managers and SEO stakeholders that we can create a real impact on the web. Because something has to change, and I do genuinely think we can help. No, I know that we can help, because in this room alone, we can have a massive impact on the, let's say, the awareness of the internet's global greenhouse emissions. So let's take a look at some hands-on ways to create more sustainable SEO practices and more sustainable online shops. So first of all, let's take a look at how SEO and e-commerce websites actually impact the environment. So remember how I fitted into these three categories earlier, so end device, energy consumption, data transfer across networks, and the data centers and servers. Well, we can also uncover which parts of SEO can potentially harm each of those large contributors too. For example, large visual assets, poor navigation, and unhelpful pages really contribute to energy wastage on end devices. Excessive requests, third-party resources, and even things like auditing budgets can really take up a heckload of data transfer. And the hosting of unnecessary URLs and latent file storage costs energy to run in these data centers too. So as a really tangible example, I started working at Kurzgesagt 6 months ago, and since then I've already tripled the size of our PDPs, and I've added around 50% more new indexable pages because it was really necessary for our online growth to provide that additional context. And even when you're running SEO tasks and strategies that provide a positive ranking impact, like expanding your topic coverage, providing quality content, and analyzing user behavior so that you can really provide what the user needs, it may lead to negative environmental impacts like increased website size, heavy media assets that need to be loaded by the user, and you need to run more tracking tools and audits and more software. So should we just stop SEO altogether? No, of course, that's not the point. The point is to aim to reduce the carbon emissions per visitor while also increase organic traffic as well. And we can use our SEO power for good, of course, to create really positive environmental impacts, like making sure that people have faster access to information, they reach satisfaction, and they meet their needs much better and faster, and that we can create more efficient websites. We have the power to create scenarios where we are not only reducing the carbon impact for visitors, but we're going to forge powerful behavioral nudges to consumers that a green web experience is actually a better one. So searchers seek out a greener website in this process as well. And as well as those 3 core impacts, there is another one. There is another, of course. Let's not forget the impact that Google and search engines have. They have a considerable footprint to deal with. In their podcast, Search Off the Record, which I love, the Google Web Quality team once discussed sustainability. Gary Ish admitted that a lot more can be done on the crawling side. It costs so much energy and resources for Google to actively crawl all of the web and all the indexed content there. They're aware of these issues, which could be solved by a potentially wonderful idea, push indexing. So the concept where you're telling Google, hello, I changed this content, please visit it now. Don't bother constantly crawling my 20 million pages to see if something changed. Please only crawl and register these changes when I've made a difference. So Index Now was created by Microsoft Bing and Yandex, was pioneered by them. Google initially thought that they don't need it. They don't need to worry about this. We have the heuristics in place. So they were like, nah, we don't want to try push indexing. But actually they returned to this topic afterwards and thought, maybe this is good for sustainability reasons. So I'm personally feeling pretty hopeful that Google will invest more resources into a topic like push indexing. Doesn't necessarily need to be this complete answer. Maybe not the Index Now protocol. There are some issues out there with the Index Now protocol. Also, Google's indexing API isn't really equipped for e-commerce websites. So let's see what the future bears here. And it's not only crawling and indexing. Just checking the time. Google's ranking process as well require a lot of processing power, and even though they're incredibly advanced, and I'm not even going to talk about AI and the energy consumption this requires. I found actually this is a really fascinating opinion paper by Google research scientists, rethinking search, making domain experts out of dilettantes. There's a lot of great tidbits in there. But one thing I just pulled out for this talk was today's cutting edge information retrieval systems are not fundamentally different than the classical systems developed many decades ago. So actually they're still using older hardware, older systems, and therefore inefficiently working on today's advanced users and needs. And also the PageRank algorithm takes a lot of processing power. There was a really interesting paper as well. There was a study where some researchers proposed hardware advancements for PageRank calculations, and they pointed out that this would provide dramatic improvements in power consumption, which tells us that, this is quite taxing right now. So we do have an additional factor. We need to consider Google's carbon emissions as well in the grand scheme. Every time a search is made, and also when crawling, indexing, and evaluating our content. So your average organic session could amount to a lot more than that initial CO2 per page, because when you think about the nature of search, you're not just typing in one query, you're finding your page and then you're done. You're checking out different pages, you're making different searches. So there's a lot more that's going on behind the surface there. So why should you care? Maybe that's what you're already thinking, aside from the fact that the planet is actually burning. Yeah. Well, sustainability can positively impact your growth, because no one here can deny that faster websites lead to better on-site experiences and more conversions, and eco-friendly websites are inherently faster. But also sustainability is becoming a huge consumer priority as well. Buyers are actively seeking out sustainable brands and products when shopping and choosing service providers. So a recent study found that 50% of consumers rank sustainability as a top 5 value driver, and 85% have shifted their purchase behavior towards being more sustainable in the past 5 years. So in Germany, we have a lot of time. I don't know how it is in the UK. I didn't check it while I was visiting. We have these brands with the climate neutral brands printed in the supermarket, and people are seeking these out. And it could be likely that this conscious effort to shop and live with more eco-friendly options will also spill over to the digital world as well. And sustainability is, of course, a popular search engine priority too. Google's missions are very loud and clear that they want to make their services carbon-free. And they are leading by example in their area, especially for their data centers, where they're being very transparent about their shortcomings, because there's so many challenges, depending on where you are in the world, of switching to using completely green energy. So it could be that they really become more transparent about more facets of the web and its carbon impact. And as a huge service provider and a beneficiary of the web, let's say, Google has a responsibility to make these emissions transparent. Maybe even the websites and services that they actively endorse. So much like how we now have hotel and flight emissions that are shown in travel search verticals so that people can choose a more eco-friendly option, potentially website emissions could be shown as well, either in the SERPs, in the result details like I very crudely mocked up here, or as knowledge graph facts, for example. And I really do hope and expect that there'll be a way to see these emissions in Google Search Console. It's not real, by the way. I didn't find some weird A/B test. So no matter your motivations, whether it's for the planet, the positive PR, or the reduced costs from a more efficient website, something has to be done. So let's see what we can actually do about it. First of all, I think it's so important to start by acknowledging that there is an issue, because as SEOs or as e-commerce managers, we play a huge part in the web, and the web plays a part in the climate crisis. We can get a more granular understanding by measuring our own website emissions using available tools and metrics. So the two that spring to mind are whole grain digital. You can pass a single URL in there and it will tell you your average CO2 emissions per page visit even, but you can only pass in one URL, so I would test it a few times. And then Right, who I used to work with, started developing a tool where you can crawl your entire website and then using the traffic information, so how many people visit your website on average every month, you get a much clearer understanding of this metric. So using metrics like CO2 per page view, which you can combine with your carbon calculator and Google Analytics. You can also take, for example, file size data from crawls. And Safari Web Tools has a pretty interesting little feature where you can calculate energy impact per page. You can make much better judgments on what needs to be done. And we can also take this knowledge to build greener sites and lead others by example, as so many of you already do. I just wanted to again mention that the ideal scenario would be to increase organic traffic while decreasing CO2 per visitor. And it will also have this really nice ripple effect on your competitors who are already monitoring your activity. When you give industry talks or contribute to articles, or if you're involved in other fields like CRO or analytics. And it will help solidify best practices that right now aren't so present. Because sustainable web design has many overlaps with web performance, which should mean it's a solved practice by now, because there's a lot of resources out there on building faster, more efficient content. But like I showed you earlier, web pages continue to grow in size and volume. JavaScript files are getting heavier and more frequently used. Images are getting larger, even font file sizes. So despite the increased awareness of performance, sites are still getting heavier and chunkier. So let's do something about it. A website can reduce or even neutralize their carbon impact many ways. So for today's sake, I've done my best to squish and condense the conventions of a green website into this little triforce here, where the fundamentals revolve around efficiency, reliability, and relevancy. So the triangle of efficiency focuses on serving only what the user needs when they need it. I think you will get the slides afterwards, so don't worry too much about taking photos, but of course go ahead if you like. And the triangle of reliability ensures the correct maintenance of your assets to ensure they are where you say they are whenever someone needs them. Also, just to quickly mention here, green hosting. This is becoming a very viable option these days, where you use a hosting provider that only runs on green energy. And then the triangle of relevancy, which ensures you provide fast, simple access to actually useful information. So really considering the content that you're putting out there and whether this will have an actual impact on your organic performance. And these are not really outrageous measures. I'm sure you've heard of all of these before, especially the more performance-minded among you. So hopefully there's nothing too outrageous for you. As a really good hands-on example of an online shop implementing green web design, I love Organic Basics. They also publish a yearly report on their carbon emissions all along the supply chain. So they're a great example of sustainable commerce in general. And just to jump on top of one of Aleda's amazing processes here, she makes amazing diagrams. So on aledasolis.com, you can find all of them. And there should be an arrow there, I don't know where it is. But you could also include this step of checking whether certain optimizations will have a negative or positive impact on your carbon emissions. Okay, 1 minute. And incorporating green processes into your work will ensure you and your clients are really considering this ongoingly. It's not just like a one-off. You could also do quarterly spring cleaning. You could have check-ins with clients. So this is an example of the Right Sustainability Journal that I worked on while I was working there, where we sent monthly reports to our customers where they can see how things are improving and what optimization steps they should take to get better. So you could do something similar if you're on the agency side, and including this step in audit checklists. And I really wanted to bring this topic today because my employer, Kurzgesagt, we create a lot of videos around climate change, but with a more positive message, because especially among like younger members of the community, they're a bit like nervous and worried about the planet's future. So I, in a sort of not small way, but in my own way, I really wanted to raise awareness of this topic because this, like SEO and e-commerce website sustainability is still a very new topic. So I really implore you to dig into this if you're interested. Use your influence as e-commerce trendsetters. And yeah, you can also raise awareness to consumers. You can provide transparency on your landing pages with CO2 per page views. You can show badges and achievements if you have achieved carbon neutrality. And yeah, support your clients, your shops, your friends, your industry. Really dig into the research. I want to hear your opinions and advice on how we can achieve this. And yeah, as a final note, I'm missing a little Earth icon there. So it has been a crappy few years for the planet. I'm a very positive person, if you know me, so I wouldn't linger too much on those. So let's not make it any crappier. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks.